Hello everybody and welcome to the Battle for the Virginia Central Railroad custom multiplayer game, episode 4 Command Meetings. If you recall in episode 3, the rebel cavalry were growing far more aggressive and they began to push back Buford towards the Bend area. And there was more intel coming into both sides as they began to make more contact across the battlefield. So in this episode number 4, we are going to review the upcoming new intel that the two sides receive. And we're going to critique the plans that they create based on that intel. And this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. We aren't actually going to do any turns. We're just going to use this episode as a way to talk about the armies, talk about their plans, review what they're going to do, and then we'll wrap it up, and then in the next episode, we're going to get back to the turns, and the battle is probably going to escalate very quickly. Let's just look at the battlefield map here at 8:40 a.m. This is the current battlefield, and this is what the two sides have to work with as they call their command meetings. We're going to start first with the Federal side. It is 9 a.m., September 19th, 1863. For the Federals, they received the following information from their scouts at Beaver Dam. Basically, they told General Meade that Ewell's Corps was moving to the northwest out of Beaver Dam during the morning, and that Longstreet was moving on a parallel road south of Beaver Dam and also moving west. They could not locate A.P. Hill around Beaver Dam, while Stuart's cavalrymen were just rumored to be in numerous places and they didn't have any reliable intel on their movements. So this is the final recon message that Meade will receive in this battle. I had some fun with the two sides, trying to make them call timeouts at 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and giving them pieces of information that was helpful, but also not very complete. So this is the end of all that. My fun torturing the two sides is over. And I think it was wise for Meade to save his timeouts up to this point in the game. The Federals have been marching non-stop and not much action has really occurred until the last few turns. You want to keep moving until your enemy gives you a reason to stop moving, and then you begin to talk about different plans and what you're going to do next. But with Stuart now on the attack and the Confederate infantry about to be into the fighting, it really is time to stop and talk about everything going on, and that is exactly what General Meade has done. With Ewell reported to be to the northwest and Longstreet to the south, where is A.P. Hill? Meade asked his generals. And it's worth noting that the Federals only have eyes on these two columns at the moment. They have yet to spot Longstreet's column coming up through the center past Beaver Dam and Bumpus. Stuart did manage to screen Longstreet's corps, which will only be visible after the Union meetings conclude, so that is an advantage for the rebels. Right now, the Federals have eyes only on these two columns. I don't know where Hill is, but my men are fighting hard against what appears to be all of Stuart's corps. We must fall back or take heavy losses, Pleasonton said. I believe we have a chance to strike the southern rebel column of infantry if the 3rd Corps moves to the east. If we restrict ourselves to only the Bend, we lose our flexibility and maneuverability. I urge we take advantage of this operational opportunity while it's still present. And General Sykes agrees. I should lead the 3rd and the 5th Corps to the east and strike out for Bumpus and hit the rebel flank. Newton chimed in that, I reckon A.P. Hill's corps is moving right along that railroad in the center, probably meaning to attack towards the Bend. And he is 100% correct in that statement. Of course, he doesn't know it. I agree with Newton, Sedgwick said. The rebels are likely stacking up against the center. General Humphreys, the chief of staff, then stated that, with 2 divisions of cavalry about to arrive from the south, the opportunity exists to send them to the east and get around and behind the enemy flank. This would force them to alter their plans and divert men to the rear. Well said. Let's kill the rebels and worry about holding any objectives later if we have to. General Meade then spoke up again. This is an important decision. If we go to the east with our cavalry to hit their rear, who is to stop them from doing the same around our northern flank? Can Buford's division stop Stuart? We may need to assign infantry to the task as well. I feel I can hold back the rebel cavalry and secure our northern flank and rear areas. I can send my other divisions to the east when they arrive. I will call on the 2nd Corps for assistance if needed. I believe this will turn into a battle around the Bend area. Our 1st, 2nd, and 6th Corps will do battle around that point. The 3rd and the 5th Corps will fight an offensive battle to the south against the enemy left flank. Newton will work with Buford to defend our northern flank by dispatching an infantry division to monitor the roads north of the Bend. Buford will fall back and join the infantry to keep the rebel cavalry away from our rear. The rest of Newton's force will move to the Bend and form up. Sedgwick will form the main part of our line around the Bend and keep the enemy from approaching too close to the objective there. Sykes will move offensively to attack the rebel column, moving northward to his east. This will protect Sedgwick's flank and keep the rebels off balance in the center. Pleasanton will receive instructions for his divisions arriving from the south during our next command conference, which I have scheduled for 10:40 a.m. Alright, let's talk about my 2 cents in regards to the federal plan. Overall, it was an excellent meeting. Everybody was on the same page, it was well led, and they seemed to be very confident of success. And their plan is very solid. I mean, they're going to defend on one flank, their northern flank. They've got the 1st, they've got the 2nd, they've got the 6th Corps over in that general area. Those are the best troops that they have. So their position around the Bend and north of it seems to be pretty strong. Meanwhile, they're going to attack on the other flank with the 3rd and the 5th Corps. Those are not their greatest corps. I don't expect them to have a lot of success in their attack, and I don't think they expect themselves to have a lot of success in this attack. But what they want to do is they want to pin down the Confederates. If the Confederates are busy defending areas, they aren't attacking. And they can't win if they only defend, because the Federals aren't just going to throw men into a meat grinder until they lose this battle. They'll fall back at some point after they feel they've done enough damage and killed enough time to where the rest of the army is set and can resist anything that comes at them later on. Lastly, they're going to attempt a raid on the enemy rear with their cavalry. And that's a really good move, because if they can get over the South Anna River with Pleasanton's other 2 cavalry divisions, and they can get around the rebel flank, I mean, the whole battlefield opens up to them. There is nothing there to stop them at all. That's going to put the Confederates in a bind. Because, I know I've said this sometimes before, the best defense is still good offense. The Federals are trying to defend the Bend, and if they just went to the Bend and they didn't do anything else, Lee would come and hit them with everything he has. Whether or not they could hold, who knows? But by attacking and forcing Lee to react and killing time by doing all these side projects, they force Lee to dance to the tune that they're playing, and that is a very good move. Keep Lee from doing what he wants to do, and that is a very effective plan. And there's just no glaring weaknesses in the federal plan at this point. They've got the proper troops at the right places, coming at the right time to do exactly what they want. It's going to be hard to beat them. Now let's go over to the rebel side of all this. And the information that they received at 9 a.m. is as follows. And feel free to hit pause here if you want to read it all the way through. But basically, Lomax's Confederate brigade has arrived on the battlefield with the intel that they gathered the evening before and from that morning. They tell General Lee that the entire Federal Army started the morning south of the South Anna River and that they are flooding over it to attack his left flank and his rear areas. The cover for the Federals is now blown. The Confederates know exactly what is going on. The Federals are not attacking from Gordonsville, but are instead attacking them from the south. How are they going to react to this news? We've been waiting to find this out ever since this game began, so let's find out. The first person to talk was Taylor. My first impression is that this information is not that surprising, given what we have learned and suspected up to now. Except for our cavalry being out of position, we have a good chance to react accordingly. Hill should close up with Longstreet to avoid being cut off. Meade is making a bold move, but I plan to continue the offensive. We can't give up the initiative. I am instinctively drawn to attacking the Union left and perhaps moving on Louisa. No matter what, Wickham's cavalry brigade must ride as fast as possible for Thompson's Crossing. If Pleasanton's other divisions get into our rear, we will be at a great disadvantage until Stuart can turn to deal with them. Hill must prepare for a brawl. I believe the enemy will strike at him and attempt to crush our left flank. Longstreet and Ewell must carry on the offensive against the Bend. A.P. Hill then spoke to say that, "I feel my force should head to the thick woods southeast of Fredericks Hall. We can fight better in the woods and negate the enemy's advantage in artillery. Longstreet will need to cover my right flank from the north." Knowing we now have a huge advantage in cavalry, we will move faster to make Buford suffer. But I am puzzled the Yankees didn't turn some force east at the South Anna River. We'd have been in great trouble if they had done so. I propose to use a division to keep up the pressure along the North Anna River and force the Yankees to send men to stop us reaching their rear areas. I don't believe Wickham will have any success stopping the enemy at Thompson's Crossings, and that it is too risky to do so. Longstreet then chimed in that the area to my front is difficult to attack, and I don't believe we can move across the open fields to hit the Bend. We can support the flank of Hill, but any offensive attacks must come from Ewell's force. We can attack in echelon if they begin to push the enemy. I will continue my advance against the Union flank. But where is that flank? Rhodes will have to follow early to lend support as they head for Centerville. Johnson will continue to support Stuart in attacking Buford. Alright, now I have to share with you some interesting observations by Taylor because this is just an impressive display. Taylor said, "We know the 2nd Corps was on the Union left when crossing the South Anna River and is likely at Louisa by now and turning east. We have yet to see the 1st Corps, but the most probable place for them is near the 2nd Corps moving on the Bend. Correct and correct. The 3rd Corps began the day on the Union right flank and we spotted them moving north opposite Hill. We have also identified the flags of the 5th and the 6th Corps units moving north beyond the 3rd Corps towards the Bend. Correct, correct, correct. He nailed all 5. You have to appreciate when someone uses all the intel given and uses it to form a very clear picture of what is going on beyond the fog of war. Of course, neither Taylor nor anybody else on the Confederate side knows just how accurate he was when he stated this, but he completely nailed the position of every single Federal Corps. That is impressive. But let's get back to the meeting. The Yankees have too much force to attack them successfully south of the Bend as we had hoped. Our double envelopment is not possible as we had planned. Our focus will turn now to an attack in echelon, with Ewell being the leading element. I want to drive on the Bend from both the north with Ewell and from the east with Longstreet. Hopefully the Federals will not be prepared and will be unable to meet both threats. Ewell will move with Early and Rhodes to strike south for the Bend. He is to try and cut the road between the Bend and Tollersville. Johnson's division will support Stuart and then drive on the Bend as well. Longstreet will act in close support of Ewell and join the attack if practicable. You will defend the left of Hill while also holding our center. You must use your instincts if an opportunity presents itself to damage the enemy by attacking. Hill will hold the North Fork Woods to the southeast of Fredericks Hall. He will be the left flank of our army. We expect an attack by 2 enemy corps. If they get around our flank, it could be a major problem. You will leave one division in reserve to guard against this. Stuart will send Wickham's brigade to Thompson's Crossing and observe the enemy if they cross at that point. The rest of the cavalry will disengage once the enemy infantry is met, and then fall back to guard our flanks and to stop any Union cavalry reaching our rear. So now it's time for my 2 cents about the Confederate plan. Well, they responded well to the new intel, and I think they were mentally prepared for the changes that were thrown at them given the intel that they had previously learned. Lee's plan commits only a third of his army to the attack, while 1/3 is left on the defensive, while the other third is left in limbo, that being Longstreet, who was given some pretty discretionary orders. I don't really know how I feel about that. I feel like you aren't going to defeat the Army of the Potomac with 1/3 of your army. It's just not going to happen. Using just really 2/3 of Ewell's corps as your main attack force, it's just not going to cut it. And the rebels probably don't want to admit it, but the Federals have taken the initiative in this battle. If the Federals simply went to the bend and they dug in and they let the Confederates do whatever they wanted, the Confederates would still have the initiative. By the Federals turning to attack them with the 3rd and the 5th Corps, guess what? The Federals now have the initiative, and they have forced the Confederates to change their plans. The rebel plan does nothing new that the Federals didn't already anticipate, and nothing that they can't react to. So for the Federals, they have all the advantage, it feels like right now, and the rebel plan, by digging in and preparing to be attacked, they have nothing to gain here by doing that. They need to be more proactive. They need to find a way to keep the initiative on their side. And attacking with 2 divisions of Ewell's corps, that's not keeping the initiative. That's not going to do anything. So I think this was a poor decision by the rebels. The games almost never come down to who owns the better objectives. It comes down to who can outkill their enemy. I really wanted to see the rebels, like I said, just throw the traditional playbook out the window and try something radical here, because a traditional plan where they're going to defend on one side and attack on the other, I just don't see that working the way the battlefield has shaped up. So let's actually talk about a few possible issues and what ifs, and let's just have a little fun here. So the rebels know that Pleasanton can be at Thompson's Crossing by 11 a.m. with his 2 arriving cavalry divisions. And Lee originally asked Stuart to block that crossing and hold Pleasanton back as long as possible if he moved in that direction. But Stuart talked Lee out of this, and he is now merely going over there to observe the Federals crossing, as if that's going to do much good. So let's play the what-if game here right now. So because I have this crystal ball, and I can play the turns, I can see what could be, what couldn't be, let's assume, and moved Wickham's brigade to Thompson's Crossing. Well, first off, they would arrive 1 turn ahead of the Federals at that point. And this is what it would look like. You'd have the Confederates already in battle line with their cavalry brigade, along with 12 cannons. So if you have 1,300 men and 12 cannons sitting at that crossing, prepared for anything, do you really think that the Federals are going to try to cross there? I don't think so. I think if Taylor's cavalry brigade arrives at 11 a.m. and they look out over Thompson's Crossing and see 4 enemy cavalry regiments in battle line, supported on high ground by 3 full Confederate batteries of horse artillery, that they just say, we can't do this. It's a slaughter. So the rest of the cavalry force and the 1st horse artillery guns, they are still hours behind Taylor's brigade. So Wickham's brigade would arrive first, they would stop the Federal advance, and they would force the Federals to either attempt a bloody crossing of that area, or they're just going to have to move to another crossing, because there is no way the Federals attack at this point successfully. I just think the Federals would disengage here and move to the north to cross at a safer point. And this would have taken a number of hours and bought the rebels a lot of time to adjust to this situation. It would buy time for Stuart to move south, and it would buy time for perhaps a brigade or two of infantry to move to the south as well. Sometimes in these games, you just have to take a big gamble, and I feel like Lee and Stuart just weren't willing to do that here. They had the intel that they would be at that crossing probably a turn ahead of the Federals, and yet they opted not to be aggressive. We're going to have to see how this affects everything moving forward, but I really feel like this was a lost opportunity. Because when you look at the map, if the Federals are able to get across at that point, and if Stuart is passive and it lets them get across at that point, Pleasanton will be over the South Anna River starting at about noon. And if that happens, all these objectives are in jeopardy. The rebels can't defend them all, nor should they even try to. It's a lost cause to try to defend that entire area with what the Confederates have. The Confederates must win this game by defeating Meade militarily, and they can't even begin to worry about these objectives, especially if Pleasanton gets over the river. They need to concentrate on Meade's army and fighting the Federals on the battlefield itself and forcing them to retreat by basically breaking their will to keep fighting. They must attack and they must succeed. Alright, playing Monday morning in general is fun, but I think you guys have probably heard me ramble on for long enough. So let's get to what's up next. Well, let's get back to the fighting. In the next episode, the two armies are going to come together. We're going to see what happens between the Federal cavalry and the Rebel cavalry. Buford looks to be in some trouble. There's going to be a lot of action in the next episode. And we're going to see which of the two sides can execute their new plans, and we're going to find out which plan is superior. There are a lot of things going on right now in this battle. You've got numerous officers on each side that need to stick to the plan and perhaps alter the plan on the fly. Are they going to be able to do that? Are they going to be too conservative? Are they going to be too reckless? We're going to find out what these officers do once the pressure is ratcheted up some. And we've done a whole lot of marching and talking up to this point, and they've brought us right up to the edge of what should be a really good battle. So it's time to get to the good stuff. As always, I appreciate everybody who has watched this. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like button on here, and be sure to tune in for the next episode. Also, check out acwgc.net for more information about the American Civil War Gaming Club. Thank you for watching.